And so I would like to announce Miss Jessica DeConnick talking to us about social engineering.
Hi, I'm Jane from Acme Network Support. We've noticed your company has been having intermittent network issues, and I was wondering if you could help me do some troubleshooting for you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Can you go to this website for me, please? It's www.acme.com.
Okay. It's popping up with a login dialog box. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it. Now please log in with your normal company username and password.
Okay. It's giving me an error message.
Check.
Access denied.
Oh, okay. Yeah, looks like we do have a problem. I'm sorry. I will continue to troubleshoot. Would you mind if I called you back if I need your help again?
No, that's fine.
Thank you so much for helping me. Bye now. What you just witnessed was a social engineering attack that would most likely lead to the victim being scammed out of money or duped into revealing sensitive information. Okay. That could even lead to identity theft and years of trouble for the victim. Hello, my name is Jessica DeConnick. Well then, welcome to my Masterworks entitled Social Engineering, the psychological methods hackers use to steal your information. In my presentation, I'll explain what social engineering is, what it is used for, the different types of methods used in a social engineered attack, the history of social engineering, and lastly, how you can protect yourself against it. Our online lives mean so much to us. How would you feel if you lost control of it? Most of us use technology on a daily basis. Using technology, we accomplish a lot online, from banking and work to connecting with friends and family, and even ordering food. How would you feel if the information that enabled you to do all these things was stolen through methods of psychological manipulation and made public? Social engineering is a psychological manipulation intended to cause the victim to reveal classified or sensitive information. And it is already a major problem that is showing no signs of slowing down, especially in the online world, with hackers trying to slip through the cracks of our minds using manipulation techniques, something everyone is susceptible to. I've been immersed in technology from a very early age, and as I've gotten older, I've realized the size, scope, and capability of this community. Hackers and scammers have particularly captured my interest. The reason is because last summer I started to watch a show called Mr. Robot. Now, Mr. Robot is a fictional show that follows the main character, Elliot, who is a young cybersecurity engineer and vigilante hacker. I was instantly sucked into their world. Now, the Mr. Robot series portrays hacking in a much more realistic manner compared to what Hollywood is usually. And they do this by showing us more of the tools and terminology that is used today. Even though the show is fictional, it made me wonder how hacking and social engineering affects the real world. While I was studying social engineering, I found out some possible motives as to why social engineers commit such crimes, and some are quite interesting. After doing plenty of research on this topic, I've seen the vulnerabilities scammers and hackers exploit, which exist in both hardware and software platforms, as well as our emotions. Vulnerabilities with the knowledge we can address and defend against. It is my hope that in this presentation, it will help us all be more aware and better prepared for this as we continue to move forward in the digital age. To start off the what is social engineering part of this presentation, I would like to provide you with a quote from CSO Online that defines social engineering as Social engineering is the art of gaining access to buildings, systems, or data by exploiting human psychology, rather than by breaking in using technical hacking techniques. For example, instead of trying to find a software vulnerability, a social engineer might call an employee and pose as an IT support person, trying to trick the employee into divulging his password. Social engineering has now become an enormous threat. Because of our society's huge online presence, a lot of our personal information is readily available to the public, like our phone numbers, full names, age, gender, possibly even our addresses, email addresses, and place of employment. The threat is real because a good social engineer can find it easy to manipulate the victim. We often don't pay attention to the little things, such as an innocent-looking link from an email from your boss, or a seemingly innocent question posed from an IT help desk technician. Both could lead to sensitive information being leaked. Social engineering is based on exploiting people's willingness to trust others. To be a successful social engineer, you need to be able to build a trusting relationship with the victim. The victim needs to think that the attacker is whom they really say they are, when in reality, they're pretending to be someone else. Social engineering is not a new issue. It has been around for many, many years. Now, I will tell you some of the examples and stories. One of the earliest documented accounts of social engineering comes from the book of Genesis, which is estimated to be created in 6th century BCE. It was written that the devil, in the form of a snake, convinced Eve that God was keeping powers from her and Adam, but from forbidding them from eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The snake uses a social engineering technique called Trojan. I will discuss this later in my presentation. Because he makes it seem like taking the fruit would be perfectly fine, and that Eve would actually gain powers that God is keeping from her. Another even older example of social engineering comes from Greek mythology. The leader of the Greek army, Ulysses, augmented his tactics after fighting a 10-year battle to capture Troy. In the end, he used a Trojan technique. Ulysses tricked the Trojan army into thinking that his army had given up their siege by gifting them a large wooden horse. Since the Trojans thought it was a peace offering, they took the horse inside their walls. In the end, the Trojans faced the well-known consequences of the soldiers hidden inside the horse. We still use the phrase Trojan horse today. In the hacking world, a Trojan horse is a file that is hidden inside of another file. This relates to the story because the hidden file equates to the hidden soldiers inside of the horse peace offering. There are many types of social engineering attacks. Some are phishing, smishing, pretexting, phishing, baiting, and water holding. I will now be explaining these, which are some of the most common techniques used today, and we'll be giving some examples and stories to help explain each technique. Phishing. Usually, the attacker sends an email, which looks like it comes from an actual business. For example, a bank or credit card company. The attacker then requests the verification of information and a warning of very harsh consequences if the information is not given to them. The phishers use certain techniques which help them to trick someone into getting certain information. They could threaten the person or use other ways of persuasion. The personal information a hacker or scammer may ask you for when targeted for an attack could be your social security number, login information, or credit card number. An example of a phishing attack could be a phone call, or an email, or an SMS text message. Now that would be called smishing. Sent by an imitation banking company asking you to log in. And if you do so, your information has been stolen. The very first phishing lawsuit was filed in 2004 against a teenager in California. The teenager made an imitation website. From the fraudulent website, The teenager was able to gather tons of information from the visitors, such as their credit card details. And with this, he was able to withdraw money from the victim's accounts. And he definitely did. Phishing and smishing are both very powerful ways of gathering information. But again, there are many others that attackers may use. In addition to phishing and smishing, there's pretexting. Pretexting is another method of social engineering. Pretexting specifically is when there's a scenario that has been created, which engages the target into using a false motive in such a way that increases the target's chance of giving away information or perform actions they usually wouldn't do. Such as, the attacker could pose as a doctor and ask for sensitive medical documentation. Pretexting is based heavily on trust. And usually when the attacker is pretending to be something or someone, they do it in an extremely realistic manner. Another type of social engineering is vishing. Vishing, also known as voice phishing. Vishing is the criminal practice of utilizing social engineering tactics over a telephone system to gain access to private, personal, and financial information. Vishing is when the attacker uses interactive voice response, or IVR for short, and creates a copy of a bank's or other institution's IVR system. They can either use voice-to-text synthesizers or a real person. They try to get the person to give up personal numbers such as a PIN, social security number, credit card and security codes, and passwords, and other confidential information, of course, as well. The data they gather can be used for identity fraud or for stealing money directly. A lot of vishers use caller ID spoofing. And what caller ID spoofing does is it enables them to look like a legitimate source, such as an actual bank or credit card company. Many people are affected by vishing attacks daily, getting many automated calls from scammers. I personally do. Now, water holding. This is when the attacker wants to access a particular organization or group. The attacker learns the target group's online characteristics, such as a website or forum that they consistently frequent, and sets up a malware trap on the site, which may be easier to hack. Eventually, a person belonging to the targeted group is compromised while they interact with the hacked site. Forbes.com, an American magazine website, was hacked by attackers using the water holding methods to snare U.S. defense and financial firms in late 2014. An advanced persistent threat that took over Forbes.com meant that the visitors to the site did not need to do anything other than just load up Forbes.com in their browser to become infected. An advanced persistent threat is an extremely sneaky computer network attack. What it does allow is a person or group to gain unauthorized access to a network and will be undetectable for a longer period of time, as it does not typically harm the host site. Humans are curious beings, and the social engineering tactic called baiting uses the victim's curiosity and greed to their advantage. An example of this could be the attacker places an infected CD-ROM or USB flash drive in places where people would be sure to find them. A good scam could be a USB key laying on the counter of your office labeled salary information, or a DVD laying on the sidewalk with the name of a movie or album that, when inserted, launches a virus or Trojan. This is a baiting scam because that USB or DVD may be infected. All it takes is one person in the company to get infected with malware, which then usually spreads to other computers as well. Now, all of these combine into different branches on a tree, and the tree itself is social engineering. Each branch ties back to need certain social engineering tactics, which assist in persuading people to freely give up their information. When it comes to social engineering, there are many true stories that have happened and are currently still happening. So I will now tell you some of those. This year, A 70-year-old West Vancouver senior was scammed out $185,000 by international fraudsters through a phishing attack. Diana's story starts off with a call from a man who claims he's from Tiffany's jewelry store. He was lying to her about someone who was pretending to be her nephew and how he was using her credit card, how he's trying to buy something with her bank card. The man on the line told her that the store would contact the police and that they suggested that she should call police as fast as she could as well. When she hung up the phone and called the phone number on the back of her card, Diana thought she was speaking to a worker from the bank she uses. But in actuality, the scammer stayed on the line and pretended to be a worker of the bank she goes to. The worker on the call gathered some information on her, which included how much money may be at risk in her account. Eventually, she was put through a fake bank fraud officer. After that, they claimed that they were investigating it and wanted to keep it on the down low before the fraudster had been identified. From that point on, the fraud with Diana kept on getting worse and worse. At this point, she kept on getting calls from police detectives, stating her bank accounts were at risk. In the end, Diana was instructed to wire the money from her bank account through a special address for safekeeping until the investigation was over. Once Diana had done the transfer, she started to doubt the whole situation, and that's when she made the life-changing decision of calling the police, the actual police, who were able to assist her in freezing the transfer before the money was lost. Diana was lucky. In the end, she was able to realize it was a scam. But many don't realize it's a scam until it's completely over. Now, remember, if anything seems fishy, contact law enforcement. Social engineering is not just confined to North America and Europe. It's a worldwide issue. In Nigeria, a group of university undergraduates called the Yahoo Boys, these people know many tactics used in internet fraud, and have used them to become very wealthy. Some of them have been discovered by authorities and have been since arrested. In April 2012, a Nigerian undergraduate student was sentenced to 5 years in prison for stealing money under false pretenses in a cyber cafe. On June 5th, 2012, a federal high court sentenced another Nigerian university student to 20 years in prison. This student defrauded an Australian out of more than $1,000. He was able to do this by impersonating a person from the Republic of Benin. In the end, the student was charged for impersonation, possession of fraudulent documents, and attempting to obtain money under false pretenses. While there are a lot of different ways the Yahoo Boys could exploit vulnerabilities on the internet, they decide to go for something which is usually quicker and easier for them to do. So they would choose many low-risk reward rather than complex high-risk reward. Many of the Yahoo Boys use dating websites or social networking sites to send fraudulent messages. In my research, I learned that the Yahoo Boys didn't just use one type of scam. They were fans of phishing too. They used this tactic to gather sensitive information, such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details. Just a few pieces of your information can result in a disaster, such as your cell phone account being compromised. Aaron Tomlinson, a Canadian citizen, this year, during February, was a victim of this kind of attack. Hackers used some personal information that they had gathered from her when talking with Rogers customer service representatives, convincing them to give access to her account. This type of attack is affecting the telecommunication industry heavily, and it's called a SIM swap. With hackers using social engineering techniques to gather some information, such as a person's name, email address, birth date, postal code, and phone numbers. In Over time, the attackers in a series of 8 different online chats gained more information on Tomlinson, such as her date of birth, email address, account number, and the last 4 digits of her credit card. Once the attackers had successfully done the SIM swap, they were able to use their own phones to gain access to a lot of Tomlinson's sensitive accounts, including her finances. After the attackers had gathered enough information, they were finally able to persuade a Rogers representative to activate a new SIM card linked to Tomlinson's account. Even though Tomlinson used 2-factor authentication on her sensitive accounts, the hackers were able to divert the messages that were sent to her cell phone. Tomlinson only noticed something was wrong when she checked one of her financial accounts and it was completely empty. She went home immediately and watched many of her other accounts being drained. Later, Tomlinson said, "I hope this is a bit more of an extreme case," she said, "but I think every Canadian's at risk right now." This loss is on the more extreme scale, but companies worldwide state that social engineering attacks are on the rise. Tomlinson's story shows how anyone can be affected if scammers can access your personal information. While the threat is real, there are many ways you can protect yourself, so I will be discussing some of those. Have you seen those pop-ups on the side or at the bottom of a website with titles such as "Try this technique to lose 20 pounds in 5 minutes," 11 fruits that medically enhance your skin, or rocks that have been proven to help with weight loss, and so on and so forth? Well, these pop-up ads can lead to potentially harmful websites. The main way to not being fooled by this is by simply not letting your curiosity get to you. Just don't click on those pop-ups and prevent yourself from getting redirected to those harmful websites in the first place. If you ever receive a call from an unknown number, text, email, or message that is asking for your personal information, don't give them anything. If you receive messages from an IT department asking for passwords or financial information, never tell them, because an IT department is not required to ask that. It is most likely a scammer trying to steal information. Even better, never answer calls from unknown numbers. Now, the reason why is because even though your curiosity may peak when you get a call, and it's kind of a habit to answer calls as soon as you get one, by answering an unknown number, you might be walking right into a scammer's trap. Another reason why not to answer an unknown number call is that this may notify the scammer that your number is active. Over time, you may get more and more fraudulent calls. Instead of answering calls straight away, let it go to voicemail. If it is a legitimate company, person, or government institution, they would leave a voicemail. But then again, a lot of issues have pre-recorded messages, so be wary of them. Unfortunately, you can't even trust caller ID because it may be a non-legitimate number spoof to seem like the real thing. If you have any digital data that needs to be disposed of, dispose of it correctly and safely. There are many disk wipe tools which you can use to securely erase data. One of the most popular tools is called Derek's Boot and Nuke, or DBAN for short. This is one of the most popular tools, and it would wipe your whole disk rather than by selecting a few things that you want to wipe. Be careful though, because as I just said, it has the capability to wipe everything. Don't use this unless you know what you're doing. Make sure when you're going to use your credit card to buy items online that you're using the legitimate source and not a copy. Also, monitor your accounts and personal data. If something seems off or you get an alert, you should act on it immediately. When you have important information that needs to be saved, consistently back up your stuff. Try to keep personal information online to a minimum. And I know many of us use social media, and many of us post a lot about our online lives on these platforms. But doing this can give a lot of information to an unattended audience. Also, keep social media accounts on private. And make sure you know the people that follow you, because that just makes everything safer. By having one person you don't know in your contacts is just not safe, and you never know what their intentions are. Two-factor authentication may help you to not get your account compromised by a hacker. 2FA is like a second barricade of protection against hackers. 2FA are like a temporary code that's given to you to unlock an account. If you see quizzes online, beware of them as well. There was a famous true story called the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica incident. Cambridge Analytica, which is a political data firm hired during the 2016 US election campaign, was able to get access to sensitive information of more than 50 million Facebook users. They were able to figure out the personalities of the American voters and were able to influence their behavior. Some of the data that they collected detailed the users' identities, friend networks, and likes, based on what they had liked on Facebook. Once they had acquired the information on the Facebook users, they used the information to target audiences with advertisements. Researchers in 2014 also created an app which showed you what personality type you have. But at the same time, it scraped some of your information. So, Dr. Kogan, a Cambridge University professor, created his own application on June 2014, which allowed him to scrape data, then provide it to Cambridge Analytica. Dr. Kogan was able to provide the firm with millions of raw profiles, and only 270,000 of them actually consented to having their data harvested when taking the personality quiz. And they were also told that it was used for academics. Again, be very wary of these personality quizzes because you never know what information of yours could be collected and distributed. Beware of social media challenges. For example, a social media challenge called the 10-Year Challenge became fairly popular on many platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This challenge involved posting pictures of oneself from 10 years ago and a picture of themselves today. During this challenge's popularity, a tweet from Kate O'Neill, a speaking consultant, stated, "Me, 10 years ago, probably would have played along with the profile picture aging meme going around on Facebook and Instagram. Me now ponders how all this data could be mined to train facial recognition algorithms on age progression and age recognition." With these photos posted online next to each other, it would be much easier to train AI to recognize the effects of aging from this readily accessible large data set, and possibly even the precursor to deepfake video manipulation. Social engineering is a psychological manipulation intended to influence a victim to reveal sensitive information. Social engineering can affect anyone and is currently developing into a far-reaching and prevalent issue. I've investigated the phenomenon of social engineering and described how an attack can take place. This included many techniques attackers use, such as phishing, smishing, pretexting, vishing, baiting, and water holding. A lot of our personal information is readily available to the public, and we often don't think about the long and short-term consequences of having this information online. While this issue is becoming ever more prevalent throughout the world today, the threat has existed since at least 6th century BCE. Luckily, there are many ways you can protect yourself from social engineered attacks. Always be aware of who you're communicating with, what links you're clicking, and what files you're running. These simple precautions can be the best defense against these often sophisticated attacks. As our world gets more connected through technology, the importance to understand and defend against cybercrimes, like social engineering, becomes ever more prevalent. I hope that this presentation has helped this endeavor. Now, I would like to acknowledge the people that supported me throughout the year. First, I would like to give a huge thanks to Adrian Van Lithioda for being my Masterworks advisor. It was amazing to work with you, and I love bouncing ideas off of you as well. You were always there to help me whenever I needed. So again, thank you for being the best Masterworks advisor I could ever have. Then thank you to Jennifer Henriksen for always looking over the grade 9 class, making sure we were getting our work done. So thank you for helping us with that. Now, thank you to the Now, to Andrew Sabo and Kevin Ellsworth for being my phenomenal external advisors. Throughout this journey, you guys have personally helped me keep on track as well. You've given me amazing ideas. And thank you for giving me the time of day. So, thank you. Amanda Sabo and Diana Ray, Jen Zadrill, for always checking on me and making sure I was progressing. And also editing my paper. That was really helpful, thank you. And I'd like to say a huge thanks to my family for supporting me, also giving me ideas, and letting me run through my script through you many times, and keeping me well fed. Finally, thank you to this wonderful community for joining us here from your busy day. So thank you.
I am so pleased to announce that Miss Jessica DeConnick has met all the requirements of the Masterworks program at Island Pacific School.